Welcome back, life science learners. Let's continue with our revision lesson. In our segment now, we're focusing on some revision questions on nutrition. I trust that you're going to engage with me, are able to write down some of your answers and check these as we work through them. Let's get straight into the lesson and apply some of our understanding by attempting some questions based on terminology. Right, so give the correct biological terms for each of the following descriptions. Write only the term next to the question numbers. Guys, it's important that when you have to write down terms that you read through the descriptions carefully. Often in questions that are confusing, there might be 2 or 3 terms that are similar, and hence if you're clear around understanding the key components of a description, you are then able to reflect on your list of terms and find the correct one. Remember that it's important that you reflect and write down your most correct answer. If in doubt, write down both the options and reflect on them before you finalize and put your answer down. So let's try that in this activity. So the disorder resulting from insufficient intake of proteins. So guys, during our lesson when we spoke about nutritional disorders, we mentioned that there were 2 disorders that was as a result of insufficient carbohydrates and proteins. The one disorder that we referred to was kwashiorkor. And kwashiorkor is a disorder which is a diet that is lacking in proteins. We also know that another type of disorder was called marasmus. And in that disorder, we realized that individuals had a diet lacking in carbohydrates. So the answer for this is kwashiorkor. Let's move on to the next one. 2.2. A type of malnutrition in which the person consumes large quantities of high energy food. As I mentioned earlier on, we spoke of kwashiorkor being a disorder in which there was large amounts of protein. The other condition in which individuals consume large amounts of carbohydrates and lack the other essential nutrients is called marasmus. And I'll spell that out for you. So it's called marasmus. Okay, so well done if you were able to get that. Let's move on to a few more. The ejection of solid waste from the body. Guys, that's the last process when we talk about nutrition. And so the ejection refers to egestion. And egestion was, again, the removal of parts of the body that are not required at the end of digestion. Well done if you were able to get that. Let's look at 2.4. The tiny finger-like projections in the small intestine. And guys, if we go and look at the lumen of the small intestine, we see these transverse folds, and those finger-like projections that extend into the lumen are called the villus. Okay? And those are structures that increase the surface area on the internal surface of the small intestine. 2.5. The process where the products of digestion become part of the protoplasm of the body cells. Let's try and unpack that. Some confusing words, but essentially let's unpack what the statement draws to. So where the products of digestion become part of the protoplasm, another word for protoplasm is the internal contents of the cell. When they get into that, we say that that is absorption. So the absorption of the nutrients into the protoplasm or the cytoplasm is the process when they become part of the cell. Okay, let's move on to 2.6. Substances secreted by the liver to emulsify fats. So guys, remember that fats are first broken down mechanically by a process called emulsification, which is essentially breaking down the fats into smaller droplets. And to assist that process, we have the liver that produces bile. So the bile is that bile salt that is released that helps to break down the larger fat molecules into smaller molecules, which then undergo the enzymatic digestion process. 2.7. the form in which excess glucose is stored in humans. Guys, we mentioned that when the body consumes or uses a large amounts of glucose, that the excess glucose is stored in the liver. And that complex glucose molecule which is stored in the liver is called glycogen. And that is a complex carbohydrate which is stored in the liver and muscle cells. 2.8. The wave-like contractions of the muscles of the alimentary canal that move food along. Guys, remember that we spoke about the muscular contractions that allow for the propulsion of the bolus. And that muscular contraction again refers to the term that is fundamental to moving food along the digestive system. And if you recollect, it starts with the letter P, and we refer to that context or that term as peristalsis. So peristalsis is what propels food along the digestive system. 2.9. The ball of chewed food mixed with saliva formed in preparation for swallowing. Guys, remember that during the process of peristalsis, when food is mixed with saliva, it moves down the esophagus. It's chewed into a little ball, and that ball of food is called the bolus. Okay, well done if you recollected that. 2.10. The muscular tube that connects the mouth cavity to the stomach. Guys, we have a tube that then transports the food all the way to the stomach before it moves into the small intestine. Here we have the mouth that allows for the food to be prepared, and that moves down the tube. That tube in which the food moves through is called the esophagus, and that is the first part of the alimentary canal that connects the mouth to the muscular stomach. And so guys, that's a wrap for looking at terms. Let's try and attempt a few more questions of a different type. Question 3. Indicate whether each of the descriptions in column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B, none of the items in column 2. Okay, write A only, B only, both A and B, or none next to the question number. So guys, these questions are often very confusing because for each response there are 4 possible answers. And this requires that you read through the descriptions and you look at the terms and that you analyze the relevance of each one. And then you've got to then try and interpret whether any one of these 4 options or which one of these 4 options are the most correct of combinations. So again, very confusing when you have 4 possible options for each answer. Let's attempt that. Again, it's a good way to measure your understanding of any concept. So, substances that need to be digested before absorption. So, what is it that needs to be digested before absorption? Guys, amino acids are the simplest molecules. They've been already digested, and so they're easily absorbed. Glucose, again, is its simplest form. So let's look at it. Are these substances that need to be digested before absorbed? No. If you think about it, amino acids are the product of protein digestion. Glucose is a product of carbohydrate digestion. So both of these do not need to be broken down any further, and hence can be absorbed easily after digestion. So the answer here, if you go back, will be none of these terms A and B. Okay, let's move on to the next statement. A lymph vessel in the villus of the small intestine. So guys, if we go back to the villi, you know that in the middle you've got that central lacteal, which is part of the lymph vessel. And that is important in the absorption of the digested fat. Let's see. So we talk about the lacteal and the lymphatic node. Now both of these terms link to the lymph system. Unfortunately, it is only the lacteal that is responsible for the absorption. So the answer here will be A only and not B. The lymphatic nodes are present around the body but not in the villus. Okay, let's look at the third option. The enzymes secreted by the pancreas. Guys, remember that the enzymes produced by the pancreas are released into the duodenum. We also know that the pancreas produces hormones. Let's look at that. So we've got proteases and your carbohydrases. So the pancreas produces enzymes that are responsible for completing the carbohydrate digestion as well as completing protein digestion. So both A and B are a group of enzymes that are released by the pancreas that are important enzymes in completing the process of digestion. Let's look at the fourth statement. The structure where chemical digestion does not take place. Focus on the word does not take place. A, the esophagus. B, the large intestine. I'm going to go back to that statement, does not take place. We know that chemical digestion takes place in the intestine. That's correct. However, the esophagus is a tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. And it is in that tube that no digestion takes place and purely food moving through. So the answer here will be A only.